a little later. Here I am standing in a 12-12 pitch model that's missing something, in my opinion, and that is the dormer. And the dormer is going to have a span that goes from inside of this common rafter to inside of this common rafter. And this is going to stay put. In fact, we're going to land the ridge right on top of it at the same elevation as this ridge. It's going to come out to here. It's going to be a little tiny one, right? The gable end right here. In fact, in plan view, it's going to be a perfect box. Now, if it went down any further and I had a consistent ridge height, it would have to get wider. So it can only go down so far. And this right here is a standard rafter bay at 16 inches on center, which makes it 14 3/8 of an inch or so. In this case it is. But in the language of the steel square, because I forgot my calculator, it's 1 foot 2 3/8 of an inch. In plan view, we'll be coming forward 1 foot 2 3/8. Straight down is where the gable will be, so that we can have a valley at 45 degrees in plan view, and this will just be a standard roof. It won't be unequal intersecting pitches. This will be a 12-12 pitch and landing on an existing 12-12 pitch roof. So we need to establish the common rafter gable end, the ridge length. Starting with the ridge length, we know the ridge is this thick. We're going to have a gable end just like this gable end, except swung this direction here. So in order to establish the length of the ridge, we just measure from this bay here to the outside. Well, we know it's 16 inches, same side to same side. So the ridge is going to be 16 inches. It's going to start right here. It's going to run out 16 inches and stop. It's going to have a 45-degree angle cut on the bottom because this is a 12-12 pitch roof. The next thing we want to do is calculate the common rafter run. We already know it is. We just said it. It's 1 foot 2 3/8 of an inch at a 12-12 pitch. Two things we need: the run and the pitch of the roof. We have them, so we can begin stepping it off with the steel square. As like I said, I forgot my calculator. So never flip, only spin the square. Starting out with the first plumb cut, drawing a line, and then where that line terminates at the top of the board, I spin the square, start my first step, full step, 12 inches. This is 1 full step, 2 3/8 of an inch. 1 foot, 2 3/8 of an inch. So marking for the first full step, and we have to slide it up 2 3/8 of an inch, which means because this is such a narrow rafter and it doesn't reach to the bottom of the steel square, use a tri-square, go to 2 3/8 of an inch, which is right there. Make a mark. What that is the length of the common rafter at a 12-12 pitch. No seat cut because it's an inside common and an inside valley. Just 2 plumb cuts. We're done with that one. What we need to do now is we need to step off this valley. So one thing we do know is the common rafter that we just marked off in plan view. We're creating that box 14 3/8 by 14 3/8. So when we cut that and smack it up against here and draw a line in plan view, it will be that. And we could just hinge it on that line to clasp the ridge up here, and we'll have that box for the valley to slide in between. We know then that the common starts at a consistent elevation, as does the valley, and terminates at a consistent elevation, as does the valley at the ridge. So that means what? That means the rises are the same for a common rafter as they are for a hip or valley rafter, but the run is elongated. Now for every standard hip, now that's a hip that emanates at 45-degree angle and valley from the corner of a 90-degree, is always going to be the same run. How do I know? Well, I just make a 12-inch by 12-inch box and measure the diagonal, and it's always going to be 17 inches. Why 12 by 12? Well, the 12 inches is always the run of a common rafter. When you call out a common rafter, you're calling out in terms of 12, 512, 612, 712. That is the pitch of the roof, and it is the pitch of the common rafter. It's not the pitch of the hip or the valley. That's a little bit shallower, but it's always in terms of 12. Now, why is it a square and not a rectangle? Because the corner of the building is 90 degrees, and it's bisected by the hip or valley and plan view at 45. Where that line meets 12 inches, when you square back, it's this perfect box. So if you draw a square that's 12 inches by 12 inches, and then you measure across it at a diagonal, it'll always be 17 inches or 16.97. But on a steel square, framing square, we reset the stair gauge on the body to 17 inches. Now remember, that always is the case for a standard roof. It never changes unless you have a bastard hip or valley, which means you have either a polygon of some kind of or unequal intersecting pitch roofs, but this isn't one of them. So here we are. Now, since the one full step has been elongated from 12 inches to 17 inches, then the partial step of 2 3/8 has also been elongated. And that's a little bit more complicated because that's 3D. Now remember, we are not flipping the square, we're just spinning the square. Something really important to remember. There's not quite enough board for us. We want to start down here. We can't draw a line like that because the other end of it's out in the middle of nowhere. So at 1712, rise is 12, consistent rise of 12. 17 is the new run for the hip. That is to say, it's they call the hip travel. We draw a plumb line, spin it around, line up the 17 inches with the plumb line, and we do one full step of 17 inches, which is equal to a full step of that of the common rafter. Where they start at the plate line, when the common rafter travels and then rises 12 inches, the hip rafter travels 17 and rises at 12 inches, and there they meet in midair. But there's a partial step of 2 3/8. If the common rafter has been elongated to create the run of the hip, common rafter run that is, then the partial step has to be elongated as well. And it is 2 3/8 of an inch. We wanted to know what that is. So I drew this 12 by 12 inch box. This is called a miter ruler. It's a miter because it's bisecting like a miter, and it's a ruler because the leg of it, this 12-inch leg of it, is divided into equal spaces of 1 inch, brought over to the diagonal and elongated, right? So I pull the common rafter run, which is this way here, at 2 3/8 of an inch. Because it was 1 foot, 2 3/8 of an inch, and square over till it hits the diagonal line and measure it. and that is 3 1/8 of an inch. So I step it forward an additional 3 1/8 of an inch, just slightly awkward with this. But we're doing it. Boom. Done. 3 1/8. Right there is it right there. 3 1/8 of an inch. That is our valley rafter length. But valley rafters, in this instance, have double cheek cuts at the top and the bottom, like this here. You see this double cheek cut there and one at the bottom, right? So you have to set back to run your saw so that the saw creates a point on either side that is consistent with the length that we just stepped. If you just draw a line on the side of the rafter and run your saw through at a 45-degree angle, the valley rafter will be a lot longer. So, the law of the land is anything that happens on one direction, the 45 happens at the other. So, when I say 45, I mean 45-degree angle, like this box right here. If I go over 2 inches and draw it to the diagonal and then square back, this side will be 2 inches also, right? Same thing. So if I want a 45-degree angle in plan view, and this is 1.5 inches thick, I have to draw perpendicular to the plumb gut 3/4 of an inch, which is half the thickness of it. Run my saw up a 45, do the same thing on the other, and that'll give us this double cheek cut, thereby not compromising the length of the whole thing. Here I have the ridge cut to length. Let's do that right in here. I'm not gonna wait around. That's our ridge. We got a couple of nice common rafters here. Right here, screw these in. Man, the one thing is I don't know where it goes, so I'm going to slide that right alongside that one because it's going to go like that. And where that meets, I draw that line there, and then I just swing it like a hinge, right? Just like that to that line. And the inside lead edge here and the lead edge here meet each other. It's not higher or lower. We're trying to have a consistent lead edge. Go up this lead edge along the ridge and down the center line of the valley here. See how this rolls. There we go. Right there. Do the same thing on the other side. Line is in here. Consistent. Yep. Got lucky. See that? 2 gables, rafters. Run this one in. Make sure the tops are flush. Number 1. Top flush, number 1. Yep, like that right there. Working out okay. There's a gable. Now we just gotta put some valleys in here. There's a valley. Now, valleys run to center line, hips run to side. Even if you had a hip beveled or backed, common rafter, jack rafter would still run into the side of it. Whereas a valley, the jack rafter is playing down to the center, so they're held high and playing down. Unless you back a valley, in which case you raise it and put a V in it, and then you just kiss the side of it, because the rafter itself will plane down to a lower point or a line. Yeah. This here, just drop it right in there. Fits like a glove. Which side is good? Taking this one. Oh yeah. So now I drew a center line mark on it. You see that? Let's see what happens with this one. Oh yeah, nice. Look at that. There's a valley right there. Which side's the top? I'll have a center line on this one too. We'll pop that one in here. See how it fits. Dropping it. Oh yeah, looks that pretty good right there anyway. Yeah. There it is. Pretty quick and easy.